Cool. I'll end up doing some sort of intro later on. This is always super free form and just really a conversation, and it gets packaged to something that's like good for the masses. But Chad, recently you uploaded your solution on the Facebook page. And I had never seen you really post that much before. Were you just kind of working? or I was drinking. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about the PDF that you uploaded?
Sure. What I did originally is just piece some things together, trying to figure out exactly where the cask was. And it just seemed that everything clicked that one evening. And I'm like everyone else. I didn't know where to begin. Looking for, where to begin the riddle, where to start at. And so I found it easy at the castle, Old King Cole's castle, to start with the riddle there. There's 15 steps heading down to the ground. I actually went personally there and counted the steps. Yes, Storyland, correct. I apologize. So the next part of the riddle was 15 rows down to the ground. There was 15 steps there, and then in the middle of 21 from end to end. Alice in Wonderland and Old King Cole are on completely opposite ends of Storyland. And when you went through the castle, Storyland's house, there was a card, a two of card, a deuce, and an ace on the wall, which was in the corner of a building. And I interpreted it as the middle of 21 would be right there, the 2 and the 1. Also, from end to end, a deck of cards, 2 is the lowest card and ace is the highest card. So I interpret it that way as well. So that put me in Storyland right behind Alice in Wonderland's house. Right behind there is a flower bed. Consists of a dwarf and a bunch of plants. And the plants today that are there are pretty much the same that I've noticed in pictures. Nothing's really happened in that area since I've had pictures there. So I started looking around. I went to the dwarf there and was looking at it real good, or gnome, if that's what we want to call it. And I noticed that the grooves on the sleeve of the gnome, right in the area of the arm, was kind of the same pattern that we noticed in the image that was given to us. That part of the image would be I guess it would be the wrinkle on the hand holding the stick. And at that point, I felt I was onto something. And that led me right there to that spot. I'm sure there's so much more detail I'm missing at this point, but it was all in my article. And there's a lot of little clues that had led me there as well. The bow tie that you can see in the image when you blow it up, a little bow tie shape. That's like the bow tie that was on the gnome at Storyland. So I went there and I prod it with a stick and actually hit something, but I don't know what I hit was concrete where they put underneath the ground to hold it to where it doesn't move. I'm not exactly sure. I wasn't there very long. Didn't want to get caught prodding with a golf alignment stick, which I left in the bushes, by the way. I stuck it in there for future times to use.
Everybody needs to go play golf.
So anyhow, the gnomes in the gnomes admire. So if you take gnome singular, add the S to admire, it pretty much says gnome's sidearm if you use it as an anagram. So, and then there's the dig that's supposedly on the leg of the gnome.
Hey Brandon,
it led me there.
What does it say on the leg of that guy, by the way?
It says Dig Jacks. Okay? Dig Jacks. It's not up for discussion. It's not up for discussion. It says Dig Jacks. Okay? Just go.
So there's Storyland's weird because it's there's a similarity with some other parks, and the biggest similarity is as soon as this cask was planted, somebody came in and basically demolished the entire park and rebuilt it. At least that's the way it seems to me. It seems like in the late 70s, this park was it was open to all. There were no fences. Whoever could just walk right into it. There was a lot of crime. There was a lot of homelessness. There was a lot of vandalism all inside this park. And in 1983 or whatever, they shut it down and just completely redid it. There is a guy on the Facebook pages whose name is Travis Schuler, who knows everything there is to know about this park. And God, just for the history aspect, I wish I could have gotten him on here. That's our biggest problem with Storyland is we don't necessarily know what was there. And we don't know exactly when things were moved. So finding the information seems to be a little tricky.
There are a lot of things that are still there that when you walk through there's a lot of concrete structures that were not moved. Well, or just like the whale is in the same spot that it was. Like there were things that were kept. And I think there was an article that listed some of those structures. But like that the whale is still there, I believe. The woman in the shoe is still there. There was a lot of things that were not moved because they were good as they were.
So were they just basically rebuilt or just sort of refreshed?
I think they were just refreshed and painted, if nothing else. But they weren't moved.
Oh, all right. Well, good. That settles at least a decent amount. I know. It just seems like every time we hit on something, there's a question about whether or not it was even there. And I think Katrina, while it may not, if the casque was in Storyland, Katrina wouldn't have damaged it at all, but it had a major impact in that it seems to have destroyed the records for the park, which is making information really, really difficult to find. I know all the stuff that I have came pre-Katrina. Like it doesn't seem to be around anymore.
The park actually supposedly has an archive with information, but it's really difficult. And Travis may be the person to ask about this because he's like a walking library. But it seems to be difficult to get in touch with someone who has access to that to allow other people to have access to it. There's an archive that Catherine Campanella used when she wrote her book, the book she wrote on City Park. But the information just really isn't readily available. And if you notice, the newspaper articles kind of stop right in that golden period that we need, like from 80 to 81. It's like nobody really, there was not anything in the news about Storyland. It was mainly just, the vandalism in 79 and then the renovation in 83. I can tell you that the things that were definitely kept were the Blue Whale, the Old Castle, Jack and the Beanstalk, Mary Had a Little Lamb, and the Two Dwarfs. So I'm not sure if when and this is when I'm saying that were kept from the vandalism period when they redid it in 83, because those were I think those were like the heavier structures that kind of were immovable at that time.
Yeah.
And when they say the Two Dwarfs, I don't know if they're referring to the gnomes like you have in your theory, or if they're the actual dwarves that were with Snow White. It's not really clear. So,
there was something Travis said online where he said that the gnomes were not there in the early 80s. That they were part of some renovation by a different designer. But it's odd. There's so much, because none of these things have definitive names. They're all really descriptive. It's hard to find concrete answers to any of this.
Right. So when I say that,
even trusting somebody like Travis, like I know Travis has good information, but does the person he got it from have good information? It's difficult in this part.
Yeah.
It said in the in Storyland that the concrete things that were concrete were left. The things that they kept that were concrete, and when Brian Kern redesigned and remade a lot of the things in Storyland, it was made from paper mache and built onto that. I do know the gnomes are concrete because I've actually touched them and checked to see if they were concrete or paper mache. So I do know they're
Right.
concrete.
The news article that lists the items that were kept, when they actually interviewed one of the people in charge of the renovation for a news article, and the items were listed as I read them to you. So they list them as the two dwarfs. Now, were they the two dwarfs from Snow White and they just used that name, or were they the dwarfs as to how they called them and they were actually what we're calling the gnomes? It's like George said, it's really not clear. It's not I mean, unfortunately, like, they didn't, I guess Storyland wasn't like a big thing to write about then, other than the crime that was happening there. So,
well, since we've got Ashley talking, like, Storyland was a big deal for searchers way before Expedition Unknown, and then once Lafayette Square was found, it seems like Storyland was sort of bypassed for Lafayette Square and for the area around the cathedral, with older searchers. It didn't really seem to make a resurgence until I think it was you, and at least publicly, until I think it was you and Sabrina and a couple of other people posted a bit of information about the New Orleans painting that led you to Storyland. Would you be willing to talk about that a little bit? Like, what in the painting did you see that said, this is Storyland?
so this is kind of, and I'll let Brody talk about this, about the flowers. So, and this is kind of like where I get stuck. So, according to Travis, the flowers were not there, which if it's true, because it does line up with what the news articles are saying, that Blaine Kern did not, his exhibits, or that's what they call them, exhibits, were not added until the 83 reno. So if I lose the flowers, right, the flowers in the corners, then
I know what you're saying. You take the flowers away, and I'm like, all right, I'm back at Lafayette Square now.
All right, hold on though. Hold on.
Almost.
Let's go back on it. First of all, they were there. I have photos of them from like the I don't know, 91, 92. So I know for sure that they were there at least then. But like, how can you discount all the rest of the stuff? You have, first of all, you have a wolf in a what looks like a dress, right? Well, there's a wolf there. The Little Red Riding Hood exhibit in there. We have the clock, which could be like the mice that ran up the clock, right? You have a spoon that's also hidden in the sleeve, right? You have which goes along with the stars and the moon, which is the cow jumped over the moon, right? There's so many things in there that actually, forget the flowers. I mean, there's so many other things there that point to the stories that are listed there at Storyland. But I have serious doubts that those flowers weren't there back in 83, because they look exactly like them, and I have at least photos from the early 90s, which wasn't too long after Price.
So they're definitely Blaine Kern flowers, and we know that he did not contribute to the park until the 83 renovation. Now, I do agree with what you're saying, that there are so many other things that do lead you there, and I think that it's hard to discount that. I think the big question is, was 1981 Storyland am I like taking what I see now of Storyland and it fits perfectly with this, with what I see in the image and what I see in the verses. So I think it's not so much like, if I lose the flowers, I lose Storyland at all. At this point, and I was talking to Travis about this the other day, at this point, I'm trying to exclude things, right? So like, this is where I think it is. And now I'm at the point where I'm trying to like, prove me wrong that it's not here, because so much of this makes sense to me. The flowers, but to George's point, the flowers were one of the things that really solidified it for me. And as far as like the other things in the image, it just depends on like how abstract you want to get with it, how concrete you want to get with it, because I think some people can make the same argument for Armstrong Park or the same argument for Jackson Square as far as the image is concerned. The verses are really what keep me the most as Storyland as my top pick, right? So, and it's mainly the verse. The image just kind of is.
Well, I have kind of a counterpoint to that. Like I feel like people have argued different parts of New Orleans using this painting, but Storyland does it in a completely different way. And when I saw it was like a PDF, and it was a couple of years back, about Storyland, it blew my mind, and it's sort of like, to give you guys credit, sort of what changed my mind about how we should view the puzzles. Because in New Orleans, people argue this looks like this, and this looks like this, and this, this wrinkle looks like the bridge at Armstrong Park, or this arch looks like whatever. But and none of it seems cohesive, right?
There's always a gap.
There's always a gap, and none of it tells the story. But Storyland, this painting seems to tell the story of Storyland, right? Every single piece of this painting is attributed to some nursery rhyme, and that nursery rhyme just happens to be right in Storyland. I mean, what's the coincidence of that? It would almost be astronomical. This painting is almost certainly about nursery rhymes
and you have to give, and we have to give credit to Sabrina, because she's the other person. Like, Travis is like a wealth of knowledge. Sabrina is an amazing researcher, and she's really the one that tied all these nursery rhymes together for me. So I have to give her credit for that.
Yeah,
but I agree with you.
It was her post that I was talking about. Like, that's what.
Yes.
When I saw that, it just blew my mind. It's like I'd never thought about the images that way.
Well, and I think that's the thing that, like, you look at a lot of the paintings, and they all seem to have something, something in them where you go like, oh, this is, like Milwaukee looks like, this, or, the obviously Cleveland and in Chicago, there's things in the painting where you go, oh, look, there's Illinois in it, and there's the water tower, yada, yada. But the two that are, I think the most abstract for me are like St. Augustine in New Orleans. And so New Orleans, speaking with Travis, he and I go back and forth a lot about like, well, this painting means nothing. Like, there's nothing in it that looks like anything. For the longest time, I thought that, until, again, I started talking with my daughter about it, and I was like, what do you see in this? And we started looking at all the things that look, because she's so closer to her childhood, was looking at nursery rhyme stuff, and all of a sudden, like that painting almost became unlocked. Like, it was suddenly like, there's a lot of stuff that makes sense in here for New Orleans, and specifically, like, it's just like with any of the paintings where, like, once you know where you're at, that thing suddenly makes all kinds of sense. And I think that's what happened with Storyland, was that, like, this was, once I kind of thought that, hey, this is where it is, then suddenly everything in the painting, starts to mean something.
What made me initially look is at work, I'm the only person that knows about this. When I'm in the operating room, we talk a lot about anything. Anything's fair game. And a lot of these people are from New Orleans, born, raised. And I started talking about the riddle and the first line about where jewels abound, and it was easy. A couple of people immediately said Carousel, City Park. And now you look at the horse picture in the image, and there's a picture of a horse. The mouth is open. Every horse on a carousel is open. And there's a jewel that his eyes kind of in the shape of a jewel, the color of a jewel. And there's gems all over the carousel. It's one of 5 carousels left in the country. There's a huge history with the carousel in City Park.
My jewels abound for City Park is a little more concrete than that. And I think most is, the Hyams Fountain has literally the word jewels on the back of it. So, I mean, that's I didn't think about it like you just said about the carousel, but, Hyams Fountain's right there.
I got to ask a weird question of Chad. You said you're in the operating room?
Yeah.
Talking about The Secret? Are you a surgeon?
No, I do anesthesia.
Oh my God. I
So
cannot
I'm in
imagine
charge
like,
of all the topics.
could
More on the
anybody imagine like going into
Yeah.
the operating room to get an
And
appendectomy?
he's saying the poem. He's
Yeah.
reciting the poem as they go to sleep.
That's right,
Repeat
exactly.
after me. At the
Yeah.
place where jewels
Jewels
abound.
abound.
It's like, wait, are you
Dear
talking about the
gods.
secret?
There is an article, and I don't know the date or anything, but Storyland was called the Jewel of New Orleans, and it was in quotations, the word jewel. I don't know the date of the article. I want to say I screenshot it and I saved it amongst all this, and I'm gonna try to find it. But it was almost like a travel article about come to New Orleans, and this is one of the jewels. It used the word jewel in the article, so that's another thing to kind of push me that way as well.
What took me to Storyland is on page 13. I know there's a lot of controversy about, it has to be in the painting or the um, or the poem, but if you look at Houston, which this one is in my opinion very similar to Houston. It's not a cultural site necessarily. It's a kids park, And if you look at the painting for Houston, it's got a lot of one-for-one images that are lined up in the painting, very similar to Storyland. And they have it's arguable that there's a train in the book, picture of a train that I think 2 of the 3 numbers match. But on page 13, I believe that's where it's talking about the French phase, and there's a castle that looks a whole lot like the castle in Storyland, and there's a pirate ship that looks 100% like 1-to-1 match of the pirate ship. You got the Rougarou with the puffy sleeve. He's got a puffy sleeve, just kind of like the puffy sleeve of the hand sticking up out of the ground with holding the stick. Same puffy sleeve. You got gnomes that look a lot like the gnomes that we see there now. I don't know if they were there then, but you've got fairies. You got what appears to be a fairy, and I may be missing some other stuff, but page 13's got a lot of things that say, that seem to match Storyland.
So it's different. It's difficult knowing the way that border was put together, and it not being a single artist, it being an amalgamation of a bunch of different tiny sketches. I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm looking at it now. I see what you're saying. I can almost guarantee you that ship wasn't drawn by John, but the fairy was, and it doesn't look like the gnomes were drawn by John. The castle probably was. I don't know. Like that part of the book, just because of the way they put it together, like it could contain clues, the border, I mean, but it would just be so hard to, because what would happen is both the Johns would draw sketches, and then they would give them to Alex J, and Alex J would just cut them up. And how would he know what to put where? And even if he knew, like, these clues have to be here, how would John and John know? Like, you know what I'm saying? It would be a massive plan to get that put together.
Puffy sleeve.
Yeah, no, yeah, I got the puffy sleeve.
Puffy sleeve. Yeah.
Well, the puffy sleeve is like exactly the same. If you look at the water fountains throughout City Park, it's exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Travis made a great connection with that. He overlaid it right on top, and it's undeniable pretty much.
There's one actually, if you go into the botanical gardens, there's one out in the middle of there that they've turned into a sundial, but it used to be a fountain, and it has that same sort of hourglass figure, and it used to have a knob on it that you would turn for the water. And Travis always makes the point that the way you would have to grab that knob to turn it would be kind of like what the wolf is making, the kind of awkward claw shape that he's making. Travis had a good idea about that.
Can we all agree on one thing? I think we can all agree on one thing. In the Boston image, home plate was the thing that people had overlooked forever. It ended up being the linchpin. You dig at home plate. In the New Orleans painting, it's 100% that spoon. The spoon and the sleeve. It's got to be. That is the most obvious thing once you know it's there, but until you know it's there, you'll miss it.
You can't unsee it after you see it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say, I just sent on Messenger, I just sent you guys a picture that I discovered of Storyland. This was before the renovation, but what excites me in this picture is there's a fairy flying from a
The
tree
tree.
in the park.
Yeah.
And, fairies, phase delight is pretty much, you could change the word delight into lighted. It pretty much is landed unexpectedly, things like that. I mean, there's all kind of definitions you could twist for it.
Yeah,
But
he's sitting in the tree with the wand, right?
yeah, no, there's one that's there's one that's flying too in the middle of the tree as well.
I mean,
So there's a
let's
few here and there. I don't know exactly where. I mean, I see the well in the very far the background. So the area I'm talking about is on the other side of the well. So this ferry wouldn't this wouldn't be actually at the dig site.
I mean, and I mean,
According to my theory.
I'd go farther than you just did and say that's a closer match than the boy to at Galliard Hall.
Seriously,
that is really good. Yeah.
So just kind of to piggyback off of what George was talking
Holy cow.
about the Boston.
Yeah.
Am I too loud?
No.
Okay.
I'm holy cowing the ferry.
Yeah, that's
all right.
crazy.
That's
All
crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So you were talking about home plate in Boston and how we overlooked it for so long. So that kind of made me look at the painting different. And if y'all look at the boy, and look on his chest, he's got his little vest on and all that stuff. But if you turn the image the other way, and I'll show it here, it looks like there's a shoe on his chest.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you go by the Cinderella exhibit, you would have the glass shoe that was there then as well. So, I mean, maybe that shoe was your dig spot indicator. Don't know.
But are we getting too deep into maybe possible matches? Like if there's so much evidence in this painting for Storyland, and I guess maybe just because I had just done the Chicago and the Cleveland videos, my mind is still set to you really didn't need those, and you really didn't need the paintings in Chicago and Cleveland, right? Once you got to the general area, you really could basically throw them away. So I'm wondering if we're getting bogged down in these little things might trying to find more evidence for Storyland when enough exists, if that makes sense.
Let me ask this though, George. You say that about the not needing the painting, but when you start talking about the ninth stone down, 7 across, or whatever it was, does it not help you out to see that the thing that you're digging at is actually in the painting? That particular one?
I guess it does, but I think what I mean by not needing the painting is it doesn't provide any direction for you. It doesn't provide any additional information other than be here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but I think if you take that part out of the painting, and I'm with you on most, for the most part, on a lot of these, but I think on that particular one, you take that piece out, and what stone are you looking for? What part? What is it that? Where at are you looking for the ninth stone, or the 7th across, or whatever? I think that's the one really that actually does sort of say, hey, maybe this thing you see in the painting is the thing that you should be counting down stones from, or that gets you to the hop up from this.
So I'll rephrase and I'll use Boston. If I handed you a piece of paper with a home plate on it and the words "This is in Boston," it would be just as helpful as the entirety of that painting.
Yeah,
I
agree on that one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But unless you saw that home plate in there, in that case, you're like, oh.
I'm wondering if we fall into that trap where we're constantly looking for new things just to reinforce Storyland, and we're ignoring the verse to our detriment. Where I don't think any of us are ignoring the verse, but I think the community at large.
Well, and I think that's what I liked about Chad's solve was I think that the first time I think the middle of 21 was where I was like, holy cow, I never thought about that. And that was so much more concrete as far as the verse was concerned than anything I'd heard in a long time.
Now, I had a question about in the middle of 21 and the way that you resolved to that. So are you basing the in the middle of 21, the two exhibits on the current layout or a previous one, because we've had like several. We had the renovation most recently, and then we had the one in '83, and then we had the original layout. So, and there's plenty of sources that talk about the exhibits and what they were. There's hardly anything that, other than the map that George has, that talks about, or even that talks about where they were in the park, other than the map that he has
The
and the
map that
one that's
George
current.
handed over. Correct. The map that he handed over, looking at it very carefully, the pirate ship is, if you use that as your anchor, your base point, Old King Cole's castle's in the same spot. It looks like the schoolhouse moved from the old map. It moved to the other side of the castle. And the pirate ship is there and the whale is there. All those are in the same spot. And then if you look above the pirate ship where the gazebo was, where I'm talking about is right by the gazebo, by the pirate ship. So when you're looking at the Nome today, and even maybe before the renovation in 2019, and maybe 83 as well, you're looking at the Nome. There's the arm with the crease. Right behind the Nome is the pole of the pirate ship. Literally is right behind it, and at the very top of that pole, there's a bucket or a basket with Peter Pan and Captain Hook at the top of it. So just looking at it, everything around you. But I believe the picture tells the story. And if you go somewhere, whether it's the carousel or Old King Cole's castle, and you walk from one end to the other, you're going to see things like the slipper on Cinderella. You're going to see all these little clues that we see in the deal. In the image, we're going to see all these things as you walk from one side of the park to the other.
You bring up a good point, and that's really why I like Storyland so much as compared to, if I had to rank them over some of the other places people feel like it's at, because it seems like when you venture away from Storyland, then you have to spread out a lot, right? So if you're in Jackson Square, you have to go from Preservation Hall to, Jackson Square, and oh, by the way, the Armstrong Park and is way over here. It feels like everything's really spread out, and that's one of the reasons why I like Storyland and that area so much, is because even though City Park is really big, you can have everything right in one area instead of having to trek 5 miles in either direction.
It kind of goes with everything else, where it's like everything was so like compact when you look at where all the clues were. They're really in such a small area from the other three that have been found.
Yeah, back to the verse, the line, the sound of friends fills the afternoon hours, and using the Japanese clue, St. George had already came up with a really good deal on that about afternoon tea. I mean, why would afternoon be relevant? That's really the only relevance I can think of for something being in the afternoon, and that would put you possibly standing at the gazebo to look for perhaps the next step.
I've got a question that piggybacks off of this that someone in this room will know. Regardless of the flowers, regardless of whether the flowers were there or not in 1982, there is a question of whether or not they are sound tubes, where you can they're like sound tubes are toys that are in a lot of playgrounds where a kid yells in one end of a tube and a kid on the other end of the park can hear it. There's a question that's popped up of whether or not that's what the flowers are. Is that what they are?
Yes, they were that way.
I've got a thought on that as well, and I don't know if anybody else remembers this from who all in this group is actually from New Orleans. Just raise a hand.
I'm from right above New Orleans, right across.
Okay, so a lot of us have spent time there. Then I used to live in Picayune, Mississippi, which is like, so we were there all the time. But one of the things that me and my wife remember is that there used to be a key that you would get when you would go in, and the key would be there was essentially like little parts of the story. You can go and you turn the key and it would tell you parts of tell you the story of that particular exhibit that was at. I don't know.
Yeah, you're correct.
I don't know when that got put in, but I know it was at least there in the 90s. It might have been one of the parts of the renovation that they did, but that was the thing that I had kind of thought about the sounds of friends, like, the sounds of the different exhibits that would fill as people were turning their keys to listen to the stories.
Yeah, the sound, the flowers thing always made the most sense to me for Sound of Friends, because it's a tool that's used for two friends to hear the sounds of each other.
Right.
And I brought
like
that
that
up
one
to
too.
Chris Preacher, and he was like, "Wow, I've never even heard of those being sound tubes." And I just want to make sure I wasn't making that up out of whole cloth. They actually were sound tubes.
Yeah, there were two taller ones, and then I don't know how they were related there, but there were also some shorter ones for younger kids as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
They were low to the ground.
You know what? I mean, that's what I recall, but I'm struggling to remember. Do I recall that because someone told me that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's what that was, or was that really what they were used for?
Are they still there?
Yes.
I think
If
they're moved
anybody
from their
would-
original
one of you guys,
location.
if you, oh well, never mind then.
Because I feel
I
like
was
they
gonna
were
say
at
if
the.
anybody goes, we just check.
I feel like they were at the front where like Humpty Dumpty and Mary Had a Little Lamb was. You know, they had the Storyland thing. I think that's been moved as well. It used to be the entrance, and now it's just sort of a thing to take your picture out in front. But I don't know if that's been moved from where it was, or they just shut off the entrance there and they moved the entrance, because now like the way to get in is you have to go to there's like a middle area between the botanical garden and the in Storyland. You have to go through and get your ticket and go in. But used to be you could just walk straight through.
Yeah, they gated that off right behind Humpty Dumpty. Yeah, it's gated off right behind Humpty Dumpty. So that's pretty much, they gated it off right there, and then you actually have to go into the building to get a ticket, and then when you come out, you would walk out to where originally, I guess between 83 and 2019, there was that yellow clock that was right there. You can actually see the different brickwork from the old and the new. You know, you could tell what the original brickwork was before the last renovation.
Well, I was just going to say, the only thing that gets me, and I keep wondering about this, because I believe the cow jumped over the moon exhibit, which would to me go with the spoon, right? If that's our marker that we're like nobody noticed until now,
No.
Or Little Miss Muffet.
Miss
Yeah,
Muffet.
Little Miss Muffet had
Little Miss
literally
Muffet.
spoon right there. Yeah.
Well, I thought it was the dish
She
and the
sat
spoon.
on the tuffet, man. She was eating some curds and whey.
But there's also the dish and the spoon as part of that same verse, right? As the cow jumped over the moon, and the dish ran away with the spoon, right? So that exhibit.
The moon.
It's not.
Am I not correct about that?
The color of the moon in the painting matches the color in the shape of the moon.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that.
It's on in the paint. Yeah, I mean,
but I'm thinking
it's a 1-to-1.
If that spoon goes along with the same rhyme as the cow jumping over the moon, right? It's close. If I remember correctly, it's close to the gate that borders Storyland and the botanical gardens. And the thing that always gets me is like whenever you think about that last line, that gnomes admire, fays delight. Like the thing to me that people, if we're talking about how simple these things should be, right? I mean, when you think about a gnome, you think about a gnome admiring a garden, right? Garden, anytime you think of a gnome, it's in a garden. So I always think about the botanical garden, and the Storyland being what Faye's Delight would be. Could it be somewhere over by that? If we're looking for the spoon, is it somewhere over by the cow jumped over the moon exhibit that's right close to the botanical gardens right there?
Have you seen the picture of Miss Muffet with a spoon? Actually, her little pantaloons, whatever you want to call them, her bloomers, they look like an upside down, the puffy sleeve hand. It looks very, very close, and the colors are a match too. Yeah, this is really good.
Yeah, I can send you guys a picture of it. Let's see. But the cow jumped over the moon was not very close to where Little Miss Muffet was sitting, right by the dragon slide.
Mm.
So almost her with the spoon, it was in between the moon, the cow jumped over the moon, and the dragon and the schoolhouse. It almost makes a Y. Gotcha. She would be the middle of the Y.
So I have some questions about the image. And I've been very quiet this whole time because I'm definitely not the specialist on this puzzle. You guys are, and I appreciate all the information you're sharing. One of the questions I have that I haven't heard anybody talk about yet, and that I've never read about anywhere, is in the bottom right of the image. There's some obvious distortion in the chessboard pattern. almost makes it look like it's kind of bubbling out or caving in, one of the two. Has anybody given any thought to that? And if so, what do they think that is?
I kind of thought that it was the distortion from the there's I'm trying to orient myself. If you're looking directly at the image and it's oriented from north to south, right? On the east side, if I'm not mistaken, that's where the golf course is. And so I always thought of that distorted area as being the hills from the golf course.
The checkerboard could be a nod to Alice in Wonderland too, because a lot of Alice in Wonderland took place in a checkerboard, a chessboard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I get that. I just don't. There's an obvious distortion in the checkerboard there, and I just don't know. I haven't heard any solid theories as to what that is representing.
I don't think throughout the life of my history with this puzzle, I don't think anyone has ever come up with anything good for that.
I've seen some good ones where people have said that it was it's essentially the shape of the CBD down,
Yeah,
if you turn
I guess
it
I
to
mean
the side.
good. I mean good in a sense that it would carry through time, that multiple people would accept it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I would say that the 2 C's in Boston was a good idea because it was, accepted. It was wrong, but it was accepted. I don't think I've ever seen anybody come up with something concrete enough to where you go, oh yeah, that's probably most likely that, and it just be accepted.
Were there any spots in Storyland where there were like the crazy mirrors that you see at like carnivals or festivals, things like that?
I didn't recall anything recently, and I don't know if I've ever seen pictures of it.
I feel
I've
like
had a
I've
friend tell
seen
me that
those.
there were.
Yeah, I feel like I remember seeing those there.
When he would go in high school, that they would do that.
That's what that reminds me of. When you walk into one of those crazy mirror rooms with the distorted mirrors and it makes everything look wonky. I don't know.
Yeah.
The other.
No, wait. I might have a picture of that actually. Let's see if I can find it. You guys,
it's obviously it's purposefully distorted, right? Like,
yeah,
everything else is so clean and
I mean, not even piggybacking off of purposely distorted. We've seen the painting. It's shaded, right? It means something, even if it's just there to be like aesthetically pleasing or to break up a pattern or whatever. It means something.
Well, and I can't speak to the waviness or the distortion, but I always like when I look at it and I look at the muddiness of like the checkers and stuff, it kind of gives me a feeling like, if you were looking like into a fountain or something, how
I can see that.
the bottom of it would be, discolored from like water, and so it just, I don't know. And I can't speak to what the intention was, but that's just kind of the feeling I get from it. Like if you were looking
I really like that.
at the floor really of a fountain, it would be
that would explain the weird highlights as well, like because this painting is highlighted weird.
Right.
So now we need a fountain with a checker at the bottom, or a swimming pool or something like it.
Right.
So another question I have while he's looking up to see if he can find those pictures is, we were talking about the Jewels Abound, and a couple people mentioned some theories. But Stephen, you mentioned, and I don't think it was yours originally, but you mentioned somebody had a theory about Jewels Abound being that kind of cluster of streets in New Orleans. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so at the top, if you're looking like at a city park, if you're looking on a map and you look up and to the left near Lake Pontchartrain, you'll see that there is oddly kind of something that looks like a mask. There's a subdivision up there, and it has sort of like 2 eyes, and I think one is Tiara Park and the other one's Harlequin. Thank you. Which, by the way, like if you look at the little guy, right, that's in the clock, looks like he's wearing sort of a Harlequin costume. So you around that area, there is a cluster of streets that are named after different jewels, and specifically a lot of the jewels that are part of the secret. And also the I believe it's the Harlequin Park, or maybe it's Tiara. There's one at the bottom that actually kind of looks like the shape of the turquoise that's at the top of the painting. So I always thought that, and actually this isn't my idea. This is something Travis pointed out to me a long time ago. But that was where jewels abound. And if you were to look, if you were to start from scratch and you were to see, preservation, right, and you're like, oh, it's got to be here in New Orleans, you would look up and start looking at a map and start looking down the names of the streets, and you would like, oh, look, here's a bunch of jewels. Maybe this is at where they abound because there's a lot of them around here. So, and then also, again, that subdivision looks like a mask, the top half at least. So
to that point, the area that those two parks are in is literally called, West End. So to me, that would also, from end to end, West End,
Right. And then there's also the last line about the namesakes, right? I mean, part of the secret is the jewels, right? And so all their namesakes, they're named after jewels. Like namesake is something that something's named after. So you have all the namesakes meeting at that place, right?
Yeah. And then, right, so the two parks that you're speaking of are on this side of, I'm sorry, can you see me? On this side of City Park, and then City Park's in the middle, and then to the other side is UNO, which I don't know if anyone's ever talked about it because preservation seems to be pretty concrete, but the UNO is the New Orleans Privateers, and preservation is actually an anagram for NO privateers. So, that's just another.
It also, the other thing I just want to point out before we move on from this is it always kind of got me is that the left-hand side looks like the mask, and the right-hand side that she's talking about kind of looks like a clock. It's like round with spikes coming off the middle of it.
So there was a point that Chris Woodford in one of our last sort of mind meld weird live streams made that was super interesting that goes along with what you were saying, Stephen. He said that Byron and John have always made a point that a kid in a wheelchair in a library should be able to solve this. And one of the ways that Chris was saying a kid would be able to solve it is if he were to open a map and look for stuff that's in the verse, right? Like he used Chicago, brush, music, hush to be what the art museum, the symphony orchestra, and the library, right? If a kid were to open a map of New Orleans and try to find the place where jewels abound, he would find that area you were talking about. That would be an obvious clue that he needs to start looking for something right around here. So I think it just lends a little bit of credence to what you were saying and also kind of to what Chris was saying.
I think that's a great start, but I also think it's a little bit of BS, right? Because if we start looking for Cleveland and finding out how the kid in the wheelchair is going to find any of the stuff.
I think Cleveland, there. If you almost got to take Cleveland out of all of these because probably, now I don't know this for sure, but probably the vast majority of the stuff from the Cleveland puzzle came from John because it was his, right. John Palancar, because it was his park. It was his, he did the painting. He did I would venture to guess it was probably his idea to put it there just because who else is going to know the Greek cultural gardens,
I think he said as much, right? Sure, that was his idea.
Oh, he came close. But
yeah, so in each of the other three solved puzzles, we had of our dig spot indicator. We had the fence and fixture, we had the columns, we had the home plate, and in all three you could see them in the image and you could see it in the verse as well. So what is everybody's thoughts on what would be your indicator in our verse and picture for New Orleans?
We've got the
I think George was saying something about a
latitude and longitude, right? That's pretty clear. Preservation.
Right, but there's nothing really
in the verse.
But I think
there's nothing
talking
in the
about
verse.
A very
in the verse.
specific
that I could
X
see,
marks the spot.
unless it was. So my thought a while back, and I don't know how valid this is because I've only seen newer pictures of this, is that the Three Little Pigs are pretty close now to where Miss Muffet was. and I could see the three of them standing watch over Miss Muffet. Like I could see that being said poetically, leading you to Miss Muffet. I don't know that even saying it and believing it myself, it's still, like, I can admit it's kind of stretchy and probably not the case, but it's the closest I've ever been able to come to something like what you're talking about.
Let me throw you a curveball on the 3 stand watch, and it just popped in my head here. The term stand watch is a Navy term. Okay, stand watch. Well, they also, and I don't know if it was there in 1981, but it was prior to 1981. They had the 3 men in a tub exhibit there, somewhere in the area.
What? I don't.
Well,
I don't.
they're in the
I don't-
Navy. They're in a tub.
3 men in a tub.
3 men in a tub.
I got you.
Rub-a-dub-dub. They're in a boat. Okay,
Yeah. Okay, I understand.
They're standing
The
watch.
water's on the wrong side of the boat.
Navy.
Does anybody remember, since you? What? Oh yeah. Okay, I got you. That was funny. That was a Bradley joke, wasn't it? Had to be. Does anybody remember a Alice in Wonderland exhibit in Storyland ever?
I feel like the rabbit was there.
Isn't there the rabbit holding the clock?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like I have pictures of that.
Yeah.
So I saw a picture at once. There was a lady who made an article about Storyland from her youth, and she had a bunch of pictures. And it was a PDF I found online, randomly searching, had nothing to do with the secret. And back then I didn't care anything about Storyland, so I didn't save it, and I can't find it again. But I remember there being a card, one of the Alice in Wonderland guards. It was a 3 of hearts, and it was literally standing watch. It was a guard.
I think I know what picture you're talking about, and I don't have it either, but I have a visual of it in my brain.
I remember it as clear as day, because even back then I was like, oh, that works for 3 stand watch, but it's in Lafayette Square, so I don't care.
We need a John Fraser for this place.
I know, right?
Somebody who's just been there forever and knows.
But at least I know I'm not crazy.
I can try to find it.
That picture exists somewhere. I want to say it was in color, so I think it was newer, but I'm not 100% sure. I haven't been able to find it since. If you want a dig indicator for me in the verse, it would be that, like, 3 stand watch right there. Like that would be perfect.
I like either of the other two, though. I like the men in the tub, and also like the 3 pigs. I mean, I think any of those could be perfect and less, abstract as any of the other stuff we've seen before.
Yeah.
With 3 goats. I think they were there as well.
3 billy goat scruff. Yeah. It's so strange that we are all grown adults who are smart and talking about nursery rhymes in this way. Let me ask you this. Go ahead. I'm sorry. No. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one thing that's always kind of like bugged me, but maybe bugged is the wrong word, and I'd like to hear what y'all have to think about it. But okay, so 15 rows down to the ground. So in I feel like a lot of people ascribe that to being steps, but in other verses, when he says steps, he means steps. So why use the word rows? And I always want to go towards like trees or things that are like in a row, because I don't have a better.
I can help you with this.
So
okay,
I can help you with this. In Cleveland, when you're standing at this planter box, you're counting rocks. You're counting rocks on a wall, bricks on a wall, and they are described as beneath the 9th row from the top. It's basically the same sort of the same structure. It's the same context or context. I'm betting wherever you're supposed to be, maybe not. It might not be bricks, but it might be. Say you're standing at Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother's house. It could be the slats on the side of the wall, like the wood slats. It could be anything. But I'm thinking you're going to need to count something physical in a row on essentially a wall that's going to say right here at the ground.
Well, and usually there's a differentiation between rows and columns, right? Like columns are straight up and down, rows are straight up. So I think it's a way of also like saying, here's the direction you should be taking, straight down. But I mean, I do agree that I think a lot of us take it as steps. But I always thought, like, even whenever you're in Jackson Square, like, the thing I liked was if you are going down, there at the steps at Jackson Square, it's not only steps that you're going down, but like frequently their break dancers or performers are out there doing stuff, and then those steps become rows of seats that you're on, right?
Yeah.
So it could be some sort of play on words as well.
I see that line as getting you to Storyland. So like, you're opening line at the place where jewels abound 15 rows down to the ground. So like, I find that the 15 rows down to the ground is describing where the jewels are. So the way that I interpreted that would be to enter through the original gate at City Park, which would be the Pizzotti Gate, and that's going to put you on Anselman Avenue. In Anselman, if you look at old postcards, and you can go out and count, there were 15 rows of palm trees that led all the way down to the entrance of the Carousel Garden, which is where the fountain is that mentions the jewels. So that's kind of my interpretation of getting you to Storyland, and it fits with the rows as well.
So that's the thing that it's so confusing about all of these. There's so many good ways to go 15 rows. If you start at the streets where, they're all, all the streets where jewels abound, and you go down from that 15 rows of streets, then you can go directly across over into City Park, and it puts you in like lower City Park where where Storyland is. But, there's so many things that like, I'm sorry, did Chad also mention about Old King Cole's Castle also has the 15 steps in there? Like, seems like there's so many things that can be kind of this 15.
So, and I've counted those steps several times. And it's kind of like the same thing with Gallier Hall. Like if you go to the top of the slide castle thing, the 15 would be the ground. Like, it wouldn't be a step. It would be, 14, and then 15 would be the ground. And like, the only reason why I question whether or not 15 rows is steps is simply based on the fact that in other verses, when he says steps, he means steps. So, not to say it's not, it's just the only reason that I question, whether or not that was the intention. But
I would say that there is something weird about the Cleveland verse about the whole so many steps and then hop. Like, there's something off about that one as well. So that's where I don't get hung up sometimes on like whether the bottom is the last step or not, or row. Because I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, George, but like there's something weird about that when you're counting too, that doesn't quite feel like it adds up.
Well, you have to hop up.
What?
It's not an actual step.
Yeah.
There's a bench in front of the planters, so you have to hop up to it.
I think we read that verse incorrectly, where we read it as 7 steps up you can hop. And I think if once you're there, it makes a lot more sense if you put a pause. If there was a comma in this where it's 7 steps up and then you can hop, right? 7 steps up to the wall, then you can hop up. Either way, you're right. It's a weird way to phrase it.
I don't know, Brody, you want to talk about the offset 9 a little bit?
Yeah. So I've been trying to figure out why that 19 is offset. I think a lot of people have. I've been kind of searching fountains and plaques and all that throughout. But if you look on the Pizzotti Gate, going into Storyland, it does have the date that gate was erected there, and the 19 that is on that gate is offset the same way it is in the painting. I can send you all the picture in a second. Let me try and find it.
So look, I'm going to send you guys another picture. Look at the mask on the image very close. Look at the nose. First of all, look at the eyes. There's black rings around the eyes that could resemble glasses. I mean, if you're doing a riddle, you're not going to actually draw glasses. I mean, you're going to give something that resembles it. And then look at the nose very close on the face, on the mask. If you look into our right, which is the mask is the left side, there's a crease for the nostril, correct? But on the right side, there is no crease at all. It's very asymmetrical. I mean, the reason why I say this is Alice in Wonderland in 1951, the person who played Alice in Wonderland is Ed Wynn, Wynn. And the picture of Ed Wynn I'm going to send you guys, and it almost resembles this picture of this mask very closely. And as well, Louis Armstrong as well. They both kind of resemble each other.
I still don't get Louis Armstrong. Like, everybody, for my entire history of this puzzle, people have said that looks just like Louis Armstrong. And I love Louis Armstrong, and I do not see it. I just don't.
It actually really resembles the Mother Goose that's hanging in the tree, in a really eerie way. But I don't know if that was there. I don't know if it was there.
That would be the creepiest Louis Armstrong.
There's definitely something unique to the shading of that mask, because your light source is coming from the front and kind of up and to the left. But the shadowing doesn't exactly resemble that all the way around. So there's definitely something hidden there. What is it? I don't know. But there's definitely something there.
Okay, so the lines in the poem that are from the book, okay? That's very obscure, and one would think that would be a high payoff clue, you would think.
Well, it is.
Difficult as it would have been to find that. So here's, George, I'm a Basin Street guy.
Okay.
Avenue, Gateway to the Americas, Avenue of the Americas. That book, the significance of that book to the literary world is to commemorate the relationship between New Orleans and South America. That's per literary experts. So there's the connection. You've got it's the three monuments to the Central American leaders, and there's a whole lot of stuff that really is a lot of clues match up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would argue,
he tells you to start off in the Japanese to go to a library. Okay. Well, right outside the library, that's, a block from there, there's you can see it from outer space, but there's the anchor. Okay. And then there's an anchor in the clock hands. And if you start there and start meandering down Basin Street, lots of things are just dead on solid matches. But
I would argue that Abroad in America, the way it's commonly used in this, wasn't a very high value clue. I think if you were sitting here in 1982 and you just had this book and you were sitting in a library and you found Abroad in America and you matched up the quotes from it, all of a sudden it tells you two of the cities. Like, without putting any work into the puzzle at all, two of the cities. I mean, I really think, like, we push them, we kind of push those aside now because they're accepted and we understand, where they came from and why they're there. But I think we forget how big of an advantage that would have been in 1982. Just picking up the book and automatically knowing at least two of the cities.
A dead on quote. Did you see this morning? Somebody posted one about New York where it was.
That was Sabrina again. Like, yeah,
that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was really good. Though somebody made a counterpoint. The quote was something about being in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, but somebody made a counterpoint that thing's never been gray, and it. Like, even when it was copper, and then it was green. It's never been gray. So I don't know.
I wonder from like the atmosphere, if you're like Byron and see that thing every day and you're looking just at it from the harbor through the atmosphere, is it a grayish color instead of being like, when you see like a picture of it like close up and like a real nice picture of it, it's clearly green, but like looking at it through the haze of the atmosphere? Is it gray?
I
But I don't know. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very good. It was very good. I'm glad she's back. She seems to have taken a break. I'm glad.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sabrina's work, and I still think she's right about Montreal.
Well, John Palancar disagrees, so.
Wait. What are we talking about here?
Her thinking that the Montreal and Milwaukee verses need to be switched.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Palancar's essentially said we're all correct on the cities, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but he's also essentially said we're correct in Milwaukee with the city first pairing.
Nah, man, Roanoke is Dallas. Come on.
Roanoke.
He's on the moon.
Roanoke is on the moon of Saturn.
I mean, forget all the other clues.
It says Dallas. That medieval scarecrow shot JR. That's what happened. That was not funny. Sorry.
There's like 3 people in the group who are going to understand that.
Yeah.
One, Johnny Windex.
George, did you get that picture that I sent of Edwin?
Yes,
portrait?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
I mean,
Yeah, I'll throw it up. I mean, I see what you're saying.
No, I'm just asking your opinion on it. That's all.
So there's a resemblance, but there's artistically there's not enough. There's not enough detail in that mask for you to say it's anybody. Like, it is generic face to me, right? If you've got a broad nose, if you've got pronounced lips, you are that mask, basically. You know what I'm saying? Or if you angle your head in a specific way, you can be that mask. So to me, it just doesn't have enough detail to have been anything concrete unless we find that exact mask somewhere.
Well, I mean, that is a weird thing. Is like, I mean, to me, it looks African American, right? And I feel like a lot of people, I think that's why they're trying.
I would agree with that. Yeah,
I think that's why they're trying to link it to
Louis Armstrong.
Louis Armstrong, because, like, it's New Orleans. He's one of the famous, New Orleans artists. It's clearly Louis Armstrong, right? But I think, and hell, it might be. It just might be a bad representation of him. But, I think what's interesting is, why does that, if we're talking about Storyland, why does that mask has any significance at all?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
one of his more famous songs was called West End Blues, which was actually about that area and the West End Park, Pontchartrain Beach. So, I mean, it's not, really that far out of the realm. I mean, or it could just be another way to link the city, if you weren't sure about the preservation across the clock. But
like, in other words, that it's like a Mardi Gras mask or whatnot, just benign.
Yeah, because it's really not, though. I mean, to me, it's more of like, and I actually had emailed a mask maker and asked, what they thought if it was a certain type or, the use of it. And he told me that it was the type of mask that you use in theater. So, I could see why people go towards Armstrong Park and it looking like the likeness of Louis Armstrong and, the Mahalia Jackson Theater all in one. Or it could just be, I think the shape is definitely specific, right? So, like, it's very, like, triangular instead of, I don't know. I think that seems purposeful. I don't really know why, or I don't have a theory as to why, or.
But piggybacking off of that, like, Louis Armstrong didn't have a triangular face, In fact,
right, exactly.
This mask, if you were to put a picture of Louis Armstrong next to this mask, it would look similar, I guess. But it would also look similar if you put, like, Fats Domino against the mask. It would look similar if you put Kermit Ruffins or anybody, really. Like, it's not. But like I said, like, the face shape doesn't match some of them. The lips don't match some of them. It's not detailed enough to really be anybody. To me, it just says mask.
Well, and the thing is like if you're in, I think why I was in Jackson Square for a little while was just because, you know, it also reminds me of like this death mask, you know, and that's one of the things that, you know, right there in Jackson Square, you can see like Napoleon's death mask is there at the museum. So, you know, is that another thing that's like right also next to Preservation Hall? It's like, or it's not next to, but it's like just like a block away from like Preservation Hall. Is that just another thing to sort of make you think? I mean, if you think about Mardi Gras mask, death mask, like, is it just one of those things that could be, you know, multiple different clues?
I mean, I kind of saw it as the mirror on the wall mask.
Ah,
that's a really good one because that also does, you know.
Interesting.
yeah, because
dang it, Brody.
It does kind of like
you got
if
all
you watch
the answers today.
It does kind of. I'm trying to recall now what that looks like in the Disney movie, but that now I'm starting to think it does look like a mask.
Oh God, have y'all seen that video? It's on YouTube. It's Mark Twain. It's like a claymation video, and it's Satan. It's like Mark Twain meets Satan in claymation world. It's like the most disturbing video ever, and it's the mask looks really,
come on,
really,
we're not
really
going
close.
down that rabbit hole.
No. I don't gonna. But go look on YouTube, and it's like.
Go find the most disturbing video of the world.
Oh, it's nothing like that. Come on, but it's.
I don't even want to know how you came upon that, but
it's like Tom Sawyer and Mark Twain, and they're on some planet or something, and Satan pops in, and the mask looks exactly like the mask.
Is there a nursery rhyme that deals with masks? Is there a nursery rhyme that deals with like a masquerade ball? Because it seems like a masquerade ball mask to me. But I can't. I just looked.
Well, I mean, there's
the original
Cinderella.
Cinderella didn't wear a mask in the original. I just looked that up, and Cinderella didn't wear a mask in the original.
I mean, I'm looking at the Snow White mirror on the wall, and it does look like a mask. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It doesn't look African American, but it does look like a mask. Huh.
Well, all right.
That's the best thing I've heard in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And the stick is Pinocchio's nose.
Yep. I can agree with that.
I can agree with that.
Well, it's also like the if you're driving into City Park, the streets are lined with like wooden they're not sticks, they're posts, but I'll send a picture, but I'm sure y'all know what I'm talking about. It's the same in Audubon, but that's kind of where I went with that as far as the.
So just for the record, I guess, can we list some of the nursery rhymes that we see in this painting and what leads us to believe that they're represented there? Like I see the wolf from Little Red Riding Hood in grandmother's dress as the hand. I see Cinderella as the clock strikes midnight. What else do you guys see?
Little Miss Muffet with the spoon. Alice in Wonderland is all over this image. I mean, it's everywhere you look. It seems to be Alice in Wonderland as well.
I also think the little boy looks like it reminds me of him flying the Peter Pan.
Peter Pan, yeah.
Goodnight Moon.
Goodnight Moon, or the cow jumped over the moon.
Yep.
Yeah, either of those. Was there a Goodnight Moon thing when did Goodnight Moon even come out?
I have the book. I can go look.
Oh, I got Google. I could be like Andy and just. Oh, it came out in 47.
Now look,
that Cleveland thing got me in trouble with Andy. He was like, "I was interested, damn it."
I might be the only one, but if you look above the horse head, I think I see the whale there, and I can send a picture of that too.
But well, I mean, it's just if it was. There's so much of this that it really can't be a coincidence. It just can't be a coincidence that there's so many nursery rhymes.
It doesn't feel like bias confirmation. It feels like there's too many things that actually just feel like that's exactly what it's got to be.
Yeah.
And there's also a picture of the White Rabbit in Alice in Wonderland holding a clock with his fingers covering up the same part of the clock that's covered up here in this image. I mean, there's so many things that are pointing to that. So
I want to say Travis jumped down us for that, saying it wasn't there.
He did.
That's going to be like our big thing, man. We just don't know. We don't know what was there. And I found a video. I don't think I posted it. It was somebody's family trip in Storyland. I think that, Steven, did I send it to you? Was it like the 60s or 70s? Which I'll include in the video here. But even that didn't show a whole lot. Like, it was good to get a sense of scale, but other than that, it just seems like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, people forgot that they owned cameras, and these pictures just don't exist.
And even back like in 1980, 1979, I mean, I don't know. They drew the pictures. The book was published in 82. So, I mean, he could have went as early as 1979. I mean, because apparently the pictures had to have been drawn and all that. But I lost my train of thought. What I was going to tell you. Oh yeah, back then, Storyland, the exhibits were open. There was no fenced in area. The botanical gardens was open. The amusement park was open. The carousel gardens, all that was one big area. So I mean, any clues from the botanical gardens, Storyland, all that could be that whole area. Because like right now, you have to pay a ticket to go from one area to the other. They're all separate, but back then everything was one. You could just free walk throughout.
So let me ask you guys this: knowing how much renovation this park's gone through, knowing the changes to the park and how it's currently ran, if this casque was ever in Storyland, if it ever was, is there a chance of getting it back?
It feels
in your opinion.
Well, so Travis has dug several times in the botanical garden, and they have allowed him to do so. Now, I don't know if that has closed the opportunity, because I know that it, at some point I think that they were tired of all that. But
well, it doesn't seem to have. There are other people that have dug in Storyland, the gardens, and the surrounding areas.
Yeah,
recently.
But so I think the possibility of recovering it is there if they're willing to let us go there. The problem is where what has been moved that erases the clues.
Well, and there's also a problem if it was, they laid cork around a lot of the exhibits when they did this last renovation. So I think it just depends on where, your spot is. If it's under that cork that they laid, like if it was next to one of those exhibits and they poured, I don't know how you pour cork, or if you pour it or you lay it or whatever, but you can't probe through that or dig through that without damaging it. And it's, a good perimeter around a lot of them. And I'm guessing they did that for like the kids, like if they're climbing on stuff and they fall, instead of hitting the ground, they're going to hit this cork now. So, I think it's just going to depend on where in relation to, it is, because even if they let you, there's certain spots that you just cannot get to anymore because of that cork.
You know what's really weird? I actually know the answer to what you were just saying, because I had a job once where it was my job I was a project manager for a playground company. And what you're calling cork is actually, it's a product called PIP. It's poured in place plastic. It feels like cork, but it's actually like a rubber.
Yeah.
And you cannot dig on, you can cut it in a sheet and dig underneath it, but you can't really put it back without it always looking like part of it was cut up. And that shit is expensive.
Right.
So if you're looking to dig anywhere, you can't dig beside, and you can't tunnel through it because you'll damage it. You can't do anything to it. So if your dig area is anywhere near that PIP, you're screwed. However, I feel like I should say, for people who are listening, that Storyland has always, while they've not been like John Fraser open to diggers, even way back before EU, in the olden days, guys were digging in Storyland with permission. Storyland, New Orleans in general, but Storyland specifically, is they're unique in America, wherein they enjoy quirky stuff like this. So they've always been really open to diggers. They've always been really open to this quirky story. As long as you're not coming at them really crazy and aggressive, they really like this and kind of want to help you. And I feel like if you have a spot there that you want dug, if you just reach out to them, they'll work with you.
For
and I
sure.
say that to
Yeah.
try to keep people from just jumping the fence and trying their luck. New Orleans has always been really good about that. If you approach somebody with this quirky story, they're more apt to help you.
Right. Unless you're in Jackson Square.
Yeah, then no.
They're not they're not down for that. But
no.
Hell, I bet one of the homeless was out there digging, though. Maybe that's what we need to do. Which is make an encampment out of there, go sleeping.
Well, and I wanted to ask, like, so how do y'all feel like? So I know the people are separated as far as like, does the back of the book, have a code or a cipher, or lead you anywhere? But does everybody think that the minor images in the back are important, or
I mean, they almost have to be.
They have to
They
be,
almost
right?
have to be.
So if you look at, there's actually, that I can't remember right off the top of my head, but that sculptor that did those love statues, they're in different cities, right? So they actually have one right in Noma, and it's on one of the t-shirts of, I forget, it's like the image of where all the people are like flying through the air, and they have like the happy face guy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So he has it on his shirt. And then also they mentioned the Spirit of 76, which was, I mean, I know that group was all over, and they have some Spirit of 76 plaques around. But, I feel like it's like City Park and Storyland specifically has the most that I've seen that ties it all, that you can't skip over anything, right? So like if you get to where, well, I got all this, but then as far as like where like 3 stand watch is concerned, it doesn't fit with my solution, right? Like for me, like City Park and Storyland encompasses the most of both the image and the verses that I've seen from anyone, or like whether it be on Quest for Treasure or the groups. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
So like I think it was Scott Harrison that had found this, and I thought it was really 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 cool. So like the face of the clock, he overlaid that on top of Lee's circle. He like outlined pretty much everything and laid it down on top, and the shaded areas that are placed around the clock match up with the storm drains that are around Lee Circle. Um, when he posted that, I thought that was fantastic work. So I don't know how that ties into everything with regard to Storyland, City Park, whatever. But kudos to him for finding that. That was cool.
Well, I think we're at an hour and a half, so we're probably drawing towards a close. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you guys want to touch on?
I mean, like, so if we talk about the I don't want to say his last name wrong, the Herpety video about that Herpety, that ties in, the themes across the board. How do we? I mean, I know that he came up with the Mardi Gras theme, which tied in well with their theory for Lafayette Square, and the part about the Easter lily or the Lent lily. How do we resolve that to City Park or Storyland if we're going to do it?
I'd have to go back and read his thing. Give me a second. Let me. So I got it right here. So he was saying, let me find it. And it was all three of them. I don't know exactly who came up with each part of this, but you're talking about something from John Hardapy, Chris Woodford, and Phil Abbott, which you can find on the secretofthesecret.com. It is, where's New Orleans here?
I mean, I thought that was great work that they did.
So they said the theme was Mardi Gras, December's flower. The narcissus is also called the Lent lily or Easter bell. Mardi Gras is French for Fat Tuesday, associated with Lent. Location, Nola's Gallier Hall. Location of major Mardi Gras festivities. I feel like I don't know. I don't. I feel like that a lot of their stuff, and because they've got a chart that lays out each month in each city, and I feel like a lot of them are very
like broad.
They're very defined and well, I feel like a lot of them are very defined and nailed down. They're not broad, they're very narrow. But I feel like this is one of the ones that's broad, and it may just be because they're going by the information that's currently known. Like none of them are from New Orleans, none of them are really from anywhere near New Orleans. So they're going by common knowledge, and maybe this one just doesn't feel as concise as the rest of them, and it might just be because the knowledge that they need is not available yet, right?
Like once we, if we dug it up tomorrow, it would all make sense, right?
Yeah, because they've got things like the Montreal thing, Miss Gold, that exists in a very small section of Montreal, right? A very, very small section. But the theme for New Orleans is Mardi Gras, and that exists literally everywhere in New Orleans. So I feel like maybe like that was one of the ones that they sort of struggled with because the correct information is not known, so they weren't able to put it all together in the way they had some of the others.
Like one thing that New Orleans is not short on is Mardi Gras stuff and archways. Like there's arches everywhere.
And
I see it all the time. Well, there's an arch French here. It must be here. There's an arch everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's we're not short on that. We're not short on arches.
Yeah. However, growing up here near New Orleans, I mean, if you were told, "Hey, let's go see a Mardi Gras parade," there's one spot to watch a Mardi Gras parade, and that's Lee Circle. That's where all the routes, if you put all the routes and overlay them over each other, majority of them go through Lee Circle. I mean, like if you wanted to catch the most beads and get the most action, Lee Circle is where you needed to go.
Right, but like if Mardi Gras is a theme, if Mardi Gras is like a theme, okay, so do you approach it as a local or do you approach it as a tourist? Because Byron would have been technically a tourist, right? So, would he get off a plane, and from reading the articles that have been posted in news articles that he was in and out, right? So would he have time to like really like absorb all that and be like, well, this is where, people go watch parades, because people watch parades technically in a lot of places. Yeah, Gallier Hall is the spot, right, for the, the city council and the grandstands, and it's a spot. But would that information be like readily available depending on when he came? I don't know the answer to that.
Let me ask you this question coming from the Byron as a tourist angle. If Byron was a tourist and he just happened to show up in New Orleans, say a couple of days before Mardi Gras, and he wanted to catch a parade, how difficult would it be for him to be in Lafayette Square on Mardi Gras as a tourist?
So
as a tourist during Mardi Gras.
Okay, so
like is that a place where that locals know about and they like?
So you have to buy a ticket. Yeah, it's reserved. It's a reserved area. Now you can get into the park part, like behind, but the grandstands and on the Gallier Hall side and on the park side, those are reserved seating. So like when we go to Mardi Gras, we buy tickets for the grandstands in front of Gallier Hall like almost a year in advance, right? Because I'd rather bring the kids there because they check armbands, like you can't get in unless you have a ticket or whatever. And it's a little bit more controlled scenery right there. The city council sits on the Gallier Hall side where they toast and everything. You have a spot, but, and it's been that way. I mean, as far as like the reserved place, as far as I've ever known. He could have still gotten into the park, but the odds of you getting into that park and doing anything anywhere close to Mardi Gras are probably next to zero. The chances are probably next to zero. Just because the sheer presence of people and it's so packed, you can't even walk. But, yeah.
I've just always been curious about that because as much as I love this city, and I love New Orleans almost as much as I love St. Augustine, I've never been during Mardi Gras. I've never got to experience any of that. So I wasn't sure.
It is a wall-to-wall people. Like you can't even move, you can't even just move. Like you move in waves with the crowd. It's just that many people. Like it's impressive as to how many people they can pack into the area. It's crazy. You definitely have to do it.
A giant float. Yeah.
You have to do it one day. Y'all should come down. We should go. Like you should get the full experience and come and go to a ball. Like go to Endymion. Come down with us and go. We'll get tickets to Endymion and you can go to the ball and do the whole thing.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, it's an experience, but.
I have probed as a parade was going by. It's great cover.
I don't doubt that at all.
Nobody pays attention to you. Nobody's looking at you.
Yeah, you might not get in trouble, but you definitely could be great.
It would be difficult to dig a hole, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, Mardi Gras in 1979 was canceled, correct? If my memory calls me correct.
Because of police riot or police protest.
Riot, yeah. Or police.
Something like that.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, if he came in 1980, that's probably a big topic as well. So, I don't know.
Well, and then like me and Sabrina, and like Sabrina's always such a good researcher. So, and this really hasn't gotten us anywhere. Like it hasn't narrowed down anything for us, but we've been doing a lot of research, and like we've been pulling a lot of inspiration from the tarot cards because, you know, I know someone posted on the group, the main page of their connections to the tarot cards, which is basically the same thing that we've been doing for the last like month or so. But the tarot for the Wheel of Fortune is very similar, you know, so there's a lot of like these, and if you look at the Wheel of Fortune, I believe it is thought, I'm gonna say it wrong. Well, it's the equivalent to Hermes, which is one of the, you know, the crew of Hermes. And so there's so many like, you know, little like subtleties. I mean, it could be completely unrelated. Like tarot could have been no inspiration for this painting at all, and we're just like finding it, but you know.
Well, and I just think too, I mean, the whole thing about, I mean, you can follow the Rougarou, right? I mean, if you look at the Litany of the Jewels and all the business, I mean, we have the Loup-Garou. You don't have a clear fairy person in there, right? But you have something that looks, you know, like the wolf hand in there. And then also in you know, you have it's called the Rougarou in the book, but in New Orleans, the lore there is about the Loup-Garou, which is, you know, sort of a Cajun like folk story.
Yeah, it's just different ways of spelling it. And I'm going to tell you, my husband swears hand to God that he, you know, he's from down the bayou, so he grew up in the swamps, and he swears to this day that he has seen the Rougarou out in the boat. I don't know. He'll tell you he's seen it. It's real.
They have strange plants out in the bayou that they smoke.